Hello my beautifuls, welcome back to my channel. My name's Lou Crawford and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be doing something called Freaky Friday. So from now on I'm going to be doing 3 videos a week on unsolved and solved true crimes, and also once a week ghost story. So if that's the kind of thing that you're into, if you're into getting a bit kind of on the edge of your seat, then please stay tuned, and I'm going to be reading you a few of the ghost stories that I found really interesting. Okay, the first one is called Haunted Attic and Possession, and it's by this person called Socracy5, and I found it on a ghost story website, and it goes like this. This happened in the year 2013 when I completed my bachelor's degree and was in search of a job. I thought the better job opportunities are when you step out of your comfort zone and try your luck in a new place. So off I went to Delhi with a couple of my friends. We were not planning a vacation, so we needed a place to stay as soon as possible. The hotels were really quite expensive, and considering our budget, we decided to rent somewhere. It was really tiresome as we were walking around in the scorching sunshine, looking for a room, meeting with people, getting rejection everywhere we tried. It was such a difficult job to try and find somewhere. I was seriously annoyed by this, but at last we found a place to stay. There was this kind old lady who offered us 3 different rooms on a 2nd floor, and it was really quite an affordable rate. We couldn't say no. To be honest, when I first approached this lady, there was something slightly off about her. I didn't know what it was, but she gave me a strange vibe. I didn't want to sound rude, since she was the only one that had helped us, so I just dealt with it. The rooms were quite spacious and neat, so I took one across the hallway shared with my buddy Manav. The other one at the end of the floor was taken by Saswat and his girlfriend Nina, and Raghu decided that he wanted his own space up in the attic room. All 3 rooms were so close that upon opening our doors, we could actually peep into one another's room. Manav decided to stay away one night, and so this night I had to sleep on my own. At around 3 AM, I woke up to the sound of someone rushing from the attic to the hallway, and finally down the stairs. I didn't think much of it, believing it to be Raghu walking around. He actually has a history of sleepwalking, so it didn't worry me too much. But once again I heard the same sound of someone rushing from the attic to the hallway. It wasn't possible since there was nobody else upstairs other than the Raghu, and I was puzzled, but I still went back to sleep anyway. The next morning I asked Raghu whether he was running up and down last night, to which he shook his head and denied it completely. Nina even said that she heard the same thing but believed that it was Raghu. Weird incidents followed, stuff being stolen, and Saswat noticed a woman with long hair and a pale body standing next to Raghu's closet. Manav, being totally unaware of the situation, saw a figure staring down at him from the attic floor every night that he returned to his room. I heard a landline phone ringing once, and it was around the kind of same time, but there was no landline at the house. And the most noticeable thing was the total denial of Raghu, and also the owner of the house. Raghu started to seem more sleep deprived as time went on, and bags started to appear under his eyes. He refused to even let anyone see him. He refused to even let anyone inside his room. Every time we saw him, the gloomier he got. He had an unusually dark vibe surrounding him this whole time. He stopped eating, and he began to ask Nina for unusual things such as baby rattles, baby food, and toys, and sometimes even her clothes. We were really worried about him, so we decided to check up on him. As soon as I touched the door to the attic, I felt this sickly vibe all inside me. It was so strong that I wanted to vomit. I felt so terribly nauseous, but I still managed to open the door. And I saw him standing there, talking to the wall all by himself. We were so terrified to see him in such a state. When he noticed us, he started behaving like a crazy maniac, throwing things at us, screaming at us at the top of the lungs to go away, to get out of the room. At that point, he resembled a living zombie to me. It was terrifying. Manav also confessed that he used to see apparitions of strange children around Raghu whenever he tried to talk to him. The next day we packed all of our bags and we left. We somehow managed to tie Raghu up with a rope, get him in the car, and we left. After coming back to his senses, he told us that he would notice creepy apparitions of people and children whispering with things like, "Stay with us." The rest of it is not known to him, he cannot remember. But we were all so terrified that we got the first train back home. It's been years now and all of us are very settled. We never speak of it. We've lost touch with Raghu, but all I know that he is now a real estate agent in Delhi. I've never ever gone back to the area, but I still always believe that the lady had something to do with it. Okay, so that was our first story. That was super creepy. Like, I don't know what I'd do. I'd never experienced anything like that, and I really actually don't know what I'd do if I saw something, an apparition, or heard whispered voices like that. It would super freak me out. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are about that, whether or not it kind of creeped you out as well. And we will get on to story number 2. Now this is from the same website, and it's called Unwelcome at the Cottage. During the last week of October 2019, my husband Rex and I decided to go on a road trip down the coast of New South Wales. We were travelling for 9 days. Our last stop on the way back to Sydney was a small little idyllic coastal town within the Kiama hinterland. The moment we drove up to the large timber-framed house on the top of the hill, I had the strong urge to get Rex to just keep on driving until we got home. The afternoon sun was shining and the whole place looked well maintained, but I just didn't feel welcome. There was something off, something unsettling. Rex was surprised at my instant dislike because I had no problems with the other places where we'd stayed. But since he was too tired to drive any further, we decided to give the place a chance. We drove down the steep gravel driveway to the 2-bedroom cottage. The cottage was built in the shape of a long, rustic-looking building similar to the design of the main house, and it was nestled among lush cabbage tree palms. It was fronted by a wooden veranda that spanned the entire length. It overlooked green meadows, and in the valley below there were grazing black and white Friesians. Each bedroom suite had separate entrance, with sliding glass doors that led out to the porch. The main wooden door with its antique lead glass detailing was in the living room and separated the suites. While Rex carted our bags back from the car, I took our cooler bag of groceries and drinks to the fridge. I caught a flash of white to my right and looked up to see a figure pass from the living room window outside. It moved quickly from left to right, and it seemed to be a woman in a white dress with short, dark hair. For a moment, I thought it was my own reflection, but the figure was slimmer than myself, and I had shoulder-length hair. There was no one staying in the other suite, and the direction the figure was walking didn't lead anywhere. The main house was totally in the opposite direction. Another curious thing was that the wooden floorboards creaked really loudly any time any weight was put on it. Yet the woman was uncannily silent on her feet. I went to the kitchen and I craned my neck out of the window, hoping to see if the woman was going to walk past the back of the cottage and I could get a better look at her. Maybe there was another shortcut to the house. But no one appeared round the corner. It was then that I noticed this disgusting stench of rotting vegetation, stagnant water and mould. It was coming from the kitchen sink. I assumed it was probably a blockage somewhere and boiled a kettle of water to pour down the drain. After I did that to both sinks, some of the distressing smells still lingered, and I told Rex that we'd have to report it in the morning. But it was most peculiar that Rex and I did not smell anything unpleasant when we first arrived. While Mary was explaining the rules for the kitchen use, there was no smell at all. She had told us that there was fresh water in the fridge, but the red frosted bottle that I found in the fridge door was almost empty. I took a tentative sip as I was really thirsty. It tasted strange, so I spat it out immediately. The contents looked like it had a green tinge when I poured it down the sink. Not stagnant or stale, almost herbal, reminiscent of jasmine tea. Maybe something from the previous occupants? I wasn't sure. I kept thinking the kitchen floor was sticky, but later I was walking around barefoot and thought to check the soles of my feet. They were fairly clean. Somewhat surprised, I touched the floor again with my bare feet and found the slate tiles were okay after all. It was odd how I got the impression that it had a dirty feel to it. That night, I was checking around the bedroom before turning off the lights, and I went to the spare bunk bed in the alcove in the far corner. I saw this wispy shadow dart off from the corner of my right eye. It didn't feel anything scary, but it just gave me a feeling that I should be warned, that I should be on my guard. When I went to bed, I said a prayer for protection and to be left in peace. I guess it must have been almost around midnight when we were startled by the small bedroom window above the bed cracking loudly. It did it twice. Yet the large sliding glass doors didn't make a sound, and the weather that day had been mild. There was no wind. The temperature only noticeably dropped when it was close to 4 a.m, and it didn't make the glass crackle when it contracted. This happened on both nights at around the same time. But I felt strangely reassured each time the glass crackled. It was as if someone was rapping sharply on the glass to chase something off. I had the comforting thought of a guardian angel. After all, I had prayed for mercies and safety on the trip. In the morning, I couldn't smell anything from the kitchen sink, so I made no mention of it. It was a relief to have breakfast at the main house, where everything felt cleaner. Mary's husband, Alan, said he'd built the house and cottage almost 30 years ago on an empty stretch of land. They had been running their place as a bed and breakfast for over 20 years. The house was located on higher ground, while the guest cottage was set on the side of the hill sloping into the valley. Once upon a time, the whole area had been a rainforest leading down onto swampy land, wet and damp. Wait a minute, that mouldy smell. At breakfast on the last day, I asked Alan if the neighbours were allowed to take a shortcut through the place, or did Mary come by the cottage again the day before? But the neighbours weren't allowed onto their property, nor were there any easy access. Mary had gone to play croquet immediately after she'd left the cottage, and Alan confirmed she did not own any white clothing. There were no other guests staying at the property. We didn't get to see Mary again because she'd gone into town for a few days after her croquet match. Still, if she had returned to the cottage, for whatever reason, it would have been at remarkable speed because the main house was at least a brisk 5 minutes climb up the hill. She would have had to change, make the trek back down, and not make the floorboards creak when she walked past the suite. Alan insisted that the figure that I'd seen had to be his wife. He was quite emphatic about it and began to sound agitated. Not wishing to upset him any further, I dropped the matter. But I did think to myself that anybody coming to the house at that time would have had to walk past Rex, who was unloading the bags from the car, and onto the veranda. He didn't see Mary or anybody else. On the morning we left, I felt the place was perfectly normal. There was no smell and everything felt fine. Was it some naturally occurring phenomena after all? Or did my hot water down the sink serve as a form of cleansing, along with the prayer that I said over the place? I have no idea what it was that I sensed, but I do know that we will not be going back to that cottage. And that's it for today's Freaky Friday. I hope you enjoyed those ghost stories. And if you did, as always, don't forget to smash that like button. I really appreciate you watching. Make sure that you stay safe and well, and I will see you next time. Mwah. Double or triple than what the actual rent was. That That really scared the bejesus out of me.